ध्यायन्तु ममाङ्गानि वाक्प्राणश्चक्षुश्रोत्रमथो बलमिन्द्रियाणि च सर्वाणि सर्वं ब्रह्म उपनिषदम् माहं ब्रह्म निराकुर्याम् मा ब्रह्म निराकरोत् अनिराकरणमस्तु अनिराकरणं मे अस्तु तदात्मनि निरतेय उपनिषत्सु धर्माः ते मयि सन्तु ते मयि सन्तु। ओम शांति शांति शांति। In the last class, which was 3 weeks ago, we had seen a portion of the Chāndogya Upanishad where how the food that we eat gives energy to our mind. Our mind is practically the result of what we eat, etc. were shown through a practical experiment. Shvetaketu did not eat for 15 days. He just drank water. And the result was he in fact forgot a whole lot of mantras which otherwise were at his fingertips. And as he consumed food, he was able to remember those mantras, recite those mantras. In other words, the mind got energized. So there is this intimate connection between food and our thoughts. And then at a later portion in this very Chāndogya Upanishad, it is also added that the quality of food is the quality of our thoughts. Ahara Shuddhau Sattva Shuddhihi is going to come later in this very Upanishad. Now in this 11th class on this Chāndogya Upanishad from the Samaveda, we are going to see two mantras which are in fact extremely significant. Please note, Upanishads do talk about food, mind, good actions, bad actions, karma, karma phala, etc. They do talk, but all of them are the secondary theme of Upanishads. What is the primary theme of the Vedanta? Vedanta being just another name for Upanishads. We would say it is to put an end to error. What error? Error with regard to who we are and what this world is. We are actually Sat, pure existence, with no differentiation, no name and form, no rise and fall, no punya or papa. And what is this world? World is not separate from us at all. One Sat expresses as the individual self, Jiva, that self itself, not something else, appears as the world, as the universe. The main teaching of the Upanishads is to dismiss, destroy the notion of duality. The universe is separate, I am separate, etc. And unlike the modern sciences, Vedanta goes beyond the waking state. The modern sciences, physics, chemistry, and many other, actually take the waking state to be unquestionably true. Within the waking state and the waking experiences, modern science finds out more and more rules, laws of nature as to how everything happens. Vedanta goes to a deeper level and reveals to us a certain truth where waking is one appearance, dream is another appearance, and waking and dream do not actually make any difference, do not cause any change in the pure existence. The purpose of the Vedanta is to awaken us to realize this pure existence. Sat. We would especially use the word Sat while talking on the sixth chapter of Chāndogya Upanishad. For right in the beginning, Uddalaka preferred the word Sat rather than Brahma or Chit or Bhuma or some other. He used the word Sat. Sat eva saumya idamagra asi ekam eva advitiyam was a very seminal statement by Rishi Uddalaka, father. The student is the son, Shvetaketu. This Sat, which again in this very Chāndogya Upanishad, in this very chapter, is also referred to as a supreme divine being, Paradevata. It is supreme divine being. Moment we lose sight of the supreme divine being, Paradevata, the moment we lose sight of, that means do not understand our being one with that pure self, Paradevata, we slip into body identification, we slip into thinking we are this personality. And the moment we take ourselves to be this personality, like 100 corollaries follow a single theorem in mathematics, 100 other consequences follow suit. Now, very soon we will enter the mantras that are selected, but these mantras, two of them for this class, give to us an unbelievable revelation, and that is the open secret of Sushupti. Open secret. Why? First of all, why is it a secret? Nobody seems to know it in this world. And why is it an open secret? That is where it is really very interesting. Everyone experiences deep sleep. Everyone actually sees deep sleep for oneself. The scholars as well as the utter illiterates see for themselves what deep sleep is. Sushupti, where Acharya Shankara would say there is no activity of seeing something other than oneself. He calls dream darshana vritti. Darshana means seeing. In dream, we see a cat or a mouse, we see sky or the river. In dream, we see our so-called relatives, friends. In dream, we may see ourselves also in front of a mirror. We see something. So dream is a darshana vritti. Waking state also is a darshana vritti. Yatra kinchidapi drishyate, tatra darshanam bhavati. That becomes seeing. In deep sleep, that is dreamless sleep, there is no darshan. Another word used in this allied literature is grahana and agrahana. Grahana here is not eclipse. Grahana is you grasp something, you conceive something, you lay your hand on something, you touch something and say, must be teak wood. You touch something and say, this must be marble. So, touching, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and even mentally envisioning something happen in waking and dream. But there is no grahana, no darshana in deep sleep. So why is it an open secret? It is open because everyone goes through deep sleep. No one in the world can say, I don't know what deep sleep is. You are meeting, you are encountering it every now and then, even in the midst of a Vedanta class. Some people experience the best of deep sleep in the Vedanta class, leaving aside humor, because everyone actually is face to face with it in a manner of saying it is open, because hardly anybody knows the secret of it or the truth of it, what actually it is a secret. So with this, let's see what the title slide of this class is, the open secret of deep sleep. The title slide among 6 slides that we have made for this particular session goes deep sleep, an open secret. And in support of that title, we have a couple of lines from the very first mantra of the 8th khanda, 8th section of chapter 6 of Chāndogya Upanishad. Shashtaha adhyayah, ashtamaha khandaha, prathamaha mantraha. In the first mantra, as far as the title slide is concerned, I have picked up a few selected words to make the matter simple. Uddalaka says to Shvetaketu, Swapnantam me vijanihi. Generally, Swapna is taken as dream. Acharya Shankara in his commentary gives a couple of arguments why the word Swapnanta cannot mean here some inside of dream or the inner truth of dream. No. On the contrary, this has nothing to do with dream. Swapnanta is Sushupti here. He justifies that interpretation in a couple of ways, but let me share with you one important way. These selected words in the very first slide have, as you are seeing now, Swapnantam me vijanihi. My dear son, vijanihi, please know, me, from me, the truth of deep sleep. Why is Swapnanta deep sleep and not dream? The very second line here says, Yatra Purushaha Swapiti. Swapiti is a pun on the word. In standard Sanskrit, Swapiti means one sleeps. Suppose your daughter sleeps. It is post dinner, while everybody else is watching some television. Your young daughter, right on the sofa, goes to sleep. So you may say at that time, simple, valid, modern Sanskrit, Mama Sutta Swapiti. She is sleeping. But Shankaracharya points out that when the Upanishad uses that word Swapiti, it has double meanings. When a man sleeps deeply, man or woman, no difference, the word Swapiti, the Sanskrit word, can also be split as Swa means one's own true nature, Api means towards, Iti means eti. The verbal root E becomes eti, means goes. Ramaha vanam eti. Rama goes to the forest. The verbal form is eti and the verbal root is E. Swa, api, iti. That has made Swapiti. And Shankaracharya asked the question, in dream, does one go to one's true nature? No way. In dream, one is actually having pleasure and pain, celebration and mourning. One is succeeding or failing and giving a traditional interpretation to what happens in dream. Adi Shankara says, dream is another expression of karma and karma phala. One night in your dream, suppose you had lot of happiness. You were received well, you went to a movie, you ate ice cream after that, and you met some good friends, you shared jokes, you laughed, and whatever. Shankara says such a dream is the result of some punya that the jiva has earned at some time. And in like manner, in some other dream, if you had suffered, you got beaten up by police who misunderstood you to be somebody else, you are not the thief, but they thought you were the thief and beat you up. Shankaracharya says, such a dream has come to you because of some bad karma that you had done. So dream is a certain way punya and papa express themselves. Whereas swam api iti, suppose you take seriously, then that cannot stand for dream. For in true nature, swa is true. Swa is atma jnana. When you are with the atma, when you are one with the atma, then the atma has absolutely no play of punya and papa. And I will not go into those lines of Shankara Bhashya. Acharya Shankara draws from Brihadaranyaka and other texts very clear statements that the pure self is not anything to do with punya, it has nothing to do with papa, etc. Waking state, you and I are doing this class also in this waking state, and in our waking state, it is another story of punya and papa working out themselves. In the waking state too, expectedly or unexpectedly, we are felicitated, made happy by circumstances. Expectedly or unexpectedly, we are given a raw deal in this waking state. So waking and dream both are in one box, where punya and papa get worked out. Whereas the second line in this slide is note, yatra purushaha swapiti swam api eti. Talks about being with the pure self. As though that is not enough, the third line also very significantly says, tada, the second word in third line, when one is in deep sleep, sata sampannaha bhavati. Sata sampannaha means one is endowed with, enriched with, sampannaha. One is filled with, one is one with Sat. Sata is with Sat. Just as Rama becomes Ramena, Sat becomes Sata. Sata sampannaha bhavati. We have translated it. He is then one with the pure being. Right away, this first slide itself reveals to us an unbelievable secret. We think that when we are fast asleep, we are in utter ignorance. The line here is saying, without mincing words, in deep sleep, we are actually one with the pure self. If we are one with the pure self in deep sleep, then we must be enlightened. We must not come back to waking state and suffer at all, somebody may say. That question itself is wrong. You are taking yourself to be coming back. You are taking yourself to be going into. You are taking the separate self as something real, something valid, something of unquestionable credentials. Like in Ramana Maharshi's Who Am I inquiry, in this context or in this portion of Upanishads also, we need to go to the fundamental question: does anybody really go from waking to dream, then dream to deep sleep? Is that not a presumption? Is that not out of an excessive attachment to the waking state? What we call a Jagrat centric view. Like Europeans may have a Eurocentric view of India. In olden days, when they colonized, it was in huge measure. Many Europeans believed India was a country of snake charmers. India was all full of superstition and so on. Really speaking, thousands of years before the Europeans came to India, India had reached the peaks of excellence in art, in sciences, by the standards of those days, in language, in music, in Ayurveda, in astronomy, and so on. No way it was, to be called a land of snake charmers, full stop. But the Europeans believed like that, right? At least a large number of them. Some, of course, found out that this is no ordinary country. Now, that was an analogy. Friends, it is of great importance for us to question this idea that we go to deep sleep and we come back. Nobody goes, nobody comes actually. Because to go and to come, there has to be an unquestionable axis of time. And the truth is, time of waking state is within the frame of reference of waking state. Time of dream state is valid within the frame of reference of dream state. And in deep sleep, while from the waking centric view, Jagrat centric view, we might jolly well say, I think I was in deep sleep for at least 2 hours, etc. That is a Eurocentric view of India, highly flawed. Here also, Jagrat centric view of understanding deep sleep is highly error. It's defective. In reality, the seers would say that's the significance of the Sata Sampanna Bhavati. Deep sleep is the unalloyed pure state. Therefore, the expression Sata Sampanna Bhavati. The Upanishad doesn't say Sushuptau in deep sleep, Sata Kinchid Avidyayacha Saha Sampanno Bhavati. There is existence and a little ignorance, a little bit of vasanas. It is not said. Nor does Shankara add a phrase that in deep sleep we are not just Sat, though it is said here, Actually, there is some vasanas and ignorance, etc. No. So, how do we then look at things? That's what Upanishads are meant to question some of our fundamental beliefs. First of all, say to yourself, I don't go, I don't come, I am. I am Sat. But in the waking state, there is Vibhranti. That's called Adhyasa. That's called erroneous perception. So there is this erroneous perception that I am just this individual and here are these objects. Some make me happy, some cause sorrow to me. A long list of such things. So we call this section something to do with deep sleep, the open secret. Let's go into more details how the very first two mantras place before us a great new view. We go to second slide and here we see the same first mantra split into three parts. The slide 1 was 6.8.1 for selected words. Now without missing out any words, 6.8.1a, the first portion. Uddalakoha arunihi Shvetaketum putram uvacha. Story. Swapnantam me soumya vijanihi iti. Oh my dear one. Soumya might be from the word soma, moon. The moon, full moon especially, so pleasing. Or it could be from the word suma, flower. So soma or suma, suma after guna. U becomes o in guna. U becomes au in vriddhi. So soma, soumya, pleasing. Oh dear one, oh pleasing one. Vijanihi, please know from me. Swapnanta, deep sleep. Swapnanta is deep sleep and not dream. There are three words in the two mantras we have selected tonight or this morning for some of you in the West, where the surface meaning is one and Acharya Shankara interprets those three words in line with the context and the Vedantic spirit, which is different from the surface meaning. One of them is the Swapnanta. Make a note if you wish to. The word Swapnanta here is not Swapna, it is Sushupti. Because Swapna generally means sleeping. When you are asleep, you could be in dream or you could be in deep sleep. In this mantra, the reference is to deep sleep. So this 6.8.1a, the second slide, is nothing new to us except the story is brought forward for you. Now, the English translation goes, Uddalaka is to narrate something which happened long ago. He is also Aruni. Maybe his father's name was Aruna, so he is called Aruni. Uddalaka Aruni Shvetaketum Putram Uvacha. English says, oh dear, from the truth of deep sleep. We go to the third slide. That is where the mind-blowing expression Sata Sampannaha Bhavati comes. This expression Sata Sampannaha is, what shall I say, pure gold. This is mind-blowing. All right, let's take a look at this part of the first mantra. We have called this in the slide 6.8.1 B, second part. Then there is a third part too. The first mantra is divided in our slides into A, B, and C. So the B says, Yatra etat purushaha swapiti nama. People say, when they say, the word nama in such sentences means as is generally believed, as is generally referred to. Nama doesn't mean to be name only. After all, name also is what people use to refer to somebody. Dasharato Nama Raja Asi. Suppose there was a sentence, then you could translate it in two ways. There was a king named Dasharatha, or you may say there was a king and people called him Dasharatha. People referred to him Dasharatha. So here, what people refer to as going to deep sleep is taken up, and Uddalaka's very powerful statement is Somya, oh dear one, Tada, during deep sleep. Now, Tada in simple Sanskrit means then. And if you take it literally, it means at that time. But really speaking, it's all because this metaphysics goes beyond ordinary language, but it has to use the ordinary language. Using ordinary language, something extraordinary has to be pointed out. So though tada is taken, do not imagine that deep sleep can ever be expressed, really speaking, in terms of the time axis of waking or dream. T1 to T2, like in physics they say, from point T1, which could be 7:30 p.m., to point T2, which could be 7:35 p.m., the duration then is 5 minutes. T1 could be on the time axis 10 nanoseconds after 0. T2 could be 20 nanoseconds after 0. Then duration between T1 and T2 would be 10 nanoseconds. So 10 to 20. But tada doesn't mean any such duration of time. It doesn't mean two time points at the two ends of so-called deep sleep experience. Please visualize with greater care. Deep sleep has no time at all. Those who are so attached to looking at everything as happening in time and space would want to put even Vedanta in time. The truth of Vedanta defies time. A sixth standard girl thought everything had to have a color, so she got up and asked the physics or chemistry teacher, what are the colors of electron, proton, and neutron? For her, electron, proton, and neutron also should be some red, green, and blue or something. Then the teacher had to say, oh my dear, these subatomic particles are not visible to naked eye. The question of red, green, blue, yellow, orange, etc. arises if something is visible to the naked eye. Then that girl showed her textbook published by some company. In my book, the electron is shown as blue, and in the Ramo's book, the electron is shown as green. Therefore, my question: publishers print a book and to some color. It's not communication. In reality, one cannot talk about color of an electron in the ordinary parlance. That is, our eyes see somebody wears a red shirt, a lady wears a blue sari, all in the context of how eyes see them. All right. Likewise, tada is a concession to language. It is deep sleep has nothing to do with time. Time rises in waking and vanishes when waking vanishes. Time, completely another axis, not the extension of this axis. The axis of time in waking is not to be extended to flow into the dream. In dream, another time axis arises along with objects, names and forms, and when the dream ends, space ends, time ends, the whole thing, lock, stock, and barrel, ends. So, this is the astounding revelation. Soumya, oh dear, my dear son, Sata Sampanna Bhavati. You actually are that all the time, so to say. But there are times when this error is operating. Then also you are Sat. In dream also you are Sat. Waking also you are Sat. You see, the Mahavakya Tattvamasi never says you will become that. Tattvamasi means you are that. Sada, Satta Sampanna Bhavati. So this is astounding. It turns the whole model upside down. This going from waking to dream, then coming back, then remembering the dream, etc., are to be questioned actually. Is it memory at all? Or is there a different explanation to our recollecting dream? Is an advanced question in the Vedanta. Now, we will dwell a little more on this, but meanwhile, we will also take a beautiful illustration. We go to the third slide now. The third is our fourth slide in number wise. In the fourth, the etymological explanation is given. Why do you so much say? Why does the Upanishad say first in the first place? Then the question, why does Acharya Shankara say whatever he says? Why does Upanishad or why does Shankara say that this mantra 1 and 2, are about Sushupti? In the mantra, earlier Swapiti was used. The mantra itself explains Swam api itaha bhavati. See, Swapiti is the Kriyapada verbal form. Swam api itaha is the what we call past passive participle. Don't be confused with this Sanskrit. It's very simple. Every one of you with so much of classes know at least this much. There is a word gacchati. That is what we call Kriyapada form. Then there is the word gataha. Gataha is what we call past passive participle. So, iti or eti is the verbal form, and swam api itaha. Itaha is like gataha. So, in deep sleep, Upanishad is saying, one has gone. Itaha means gataha. One has gone to one's own true nature. Like I said about tada, then this expression gone to also has to be taken with a grain of salt. It's not literally gone. You know, it's as simple as this. If you ponder Vedanta and stay more and more in your understanding as the pure self, this idea of going will become ridiculous to you. Because you are the pure self, and this pure self is all pervasive. The pure self defies space and time. And how under the sun is again ordinary language expression. How under the sun can the pure self go from waking to dream, etc.? Other, there is the pure self, and you are that pure self, and there is a certain perception, erroneous perception. It's avidya bhumi, where there is the enjoyer perceived as separate from the enjoyed, the sufferer perceived as separate from the perceived, and so on. So, swam api ita bhavati. Upanishad also is a little helpless. It has to use the ordinary language. But that's where it is said, Acharyavan Purusho Veda. A competent teacher shows to the students where the students may take an expression literally and where they should not take the expression literally. Swam api itaha, swarupam prati gataha. That's what it means. Swarupam prati gataha. One has gone to one's own true nature. No one has gone, no one has come. But deep sleep is one where one is in fact with one's own pure self. Tasmadenam swapititi achakshate. He has gone towards or into himself. Therefore, they say swa api iti. So, I have put both the forms iti and eti because iti is if you simply put the termination to the verbal root e, which means go, but actually in usage it becomes eti. Eti means goes. Ehi means you are telling somebody, please come. A plus ihi. You have a popular bhajan. Ehi murare kunja vihare. Ehi. Ehi means come. Ihi means go. So E is a well-known verbal root. Swam api iti. Swam api itaha bhavati. Swam hi api itaha bhavati. Emphasizing that the mantra, this is the Upanishad mantra. You will see a couple of words probably from Shankara Bhashya separately. This presently is the Veda mantra. It is Shruti. It is not Purusha Krita. It is revelation, we call it. It is Apaurusheya. It is not from under the hat of any clever writer. This is a divine revelation. So the last line here says, because he has indeed gone to his own true nature. Let me tell you, this whole session is to place before you one truth, one open secret, and that is no other than you at all time are yourself. In deep sleep, you perceive that with no obstacle. In waking and dream, names and forms appear and one is deluded. You and I get deluded. And the job of Upanishads is not to make those names and forms subside. No. The job of the Upanishads is to let us know that we are not the separate self. The separation, the division, the idea, I am this much only and not more. It's an idea, it's a belief. I won't tell the whole story, but there's a humorous story how a man believed that he was a mouse and he was afraid of cats, right? So he was limited by his belief. Vedanta says you are limited by your belief, your thought, which is spiritual ignorance. Vedanta's job is to remove spiritual ignorance. As Swami Dayanandji said at certain place, in order to show water, one doesn't have to wait till the waves in the ocean subside. Even as the waves are rising and falling, maybe taller and taller waves, making much more sound than ever before, are rising and falling. Water can be shown. Water can be shown. This is water. So, through proper communication, water can be shown even as waves are rising and falling. Like that, let there be names and forms, let there be various other projections. The Upanishad study can help us steer through them, clear through them, and see ourselves as not limited. No loss of money, no failure of some venture, no relationship going down the drain can then affect us. For in and through all those vicissitudes of life, we will be continuously perceiving ourselves as the pure self, as some people would call it, the divine silence. There is a blissful silence. That's what happens to you and me even when we rise above some particular delusions in life. In childhood, we would have been very attached to toys. And then a stage comes, there are lots of toys around us, but they don't affect us at all. In order that we are no more crying over broken toys or toys that were not given to us, in order that we do not cry, there's no need for adults or older people to take away all the toys from our sight. We grow inside us. That applies to money, that applies to woman, that applies to man, that applies to power, that applies to pleasures, that can apply to 1,000 things. Once they are around us, a certain shift in our outlook can make us be at peace, even with the so-called ups and downs, right? So that is the upshot of these mantras. Now, rest of it actually gives us a beautiful analogy. We'll quickly see. The slide 5 says, in a layman's language, the Upanishad goes up and down to layman's language and then the profound metaphysical, philosophical insight. Sayata Shakunihi Sutrena Prabaddaha. Shakuni here is not Shakuni Mama, the uncle of Pandavas and Kauravas. The word Shakuni in Sanskrit is a bird. A bird, Prabaddaha, tightly bound, tied, Sutrena, with a thread, to a pole is implied. It's tied to a pole. Somewhere this illustration is given, I guess in the Upanishadic literature itself, or maybe some commentator made it a little more picturesque. It's not only tied, it is tied to a pole upon a ship, and the ship has gone into the mid-sea, and the bird tied to a rope. In fact, in that example, rope also is not necessary. Sea is so wide, the bird flies in one direction, hoping to find some land, but 100 miles in all directions, 360 degrees. 100 miles is water only. It comes back. Goes north, comes back. Goes south, comes back. Goes east, comes back. Goes west, comes back. Tired. Shakunihi. Here, this could be on the land. It need not be on the ship. Sutrena prabhatta. About whatever way. But idea is disham disham patitva. Pat here means flying. Somewhere else patati can mean fall. But here patitva means flying in different directions, unable to find another shelter. It comes back to the very pole where it is tied. Likewise, in the last slide, I'll explain the significance in connection with deep sleep, but we see the last slide now. Evameva khalu saumya tanmanaha disham disham patitva anyatra ayatanam alabdva pranameva upashrayate pranabandhanam hi saumya manaiti. Earlier I said there are three words in this portion which we are seeing this class, where Adi Shankara very rightly with his sense of context gives the right meaning for those three words. We are not to take them on superficial meaning. The earlier one was the Swapnanta. Swapnanta has nothing to do with Swapna dream. Swapnanta is Sushupti. The second one is Manaha. Though it is called Manaha, what it means, this is Jiva. That is pure consciousness reflected in Manaha, mind, and not just reflected, making possible a certain illusory sense of separate self, what Maharshi Ramana would call aham vritti. ahankriti, ahankara, the little self, the separate self, that is mana. And let me tell now itself what is the third word which those who are not aware of the Vedic context might just attach one meaning to it. Prana. Third line, pranameva upashrayati. Some of us who may have limited knowledge of scriptures, prana means breath. Prana means there are pancha pranas. Prana is prana, apana, vyana. No. All that is okay in some other context. But here, prana is no other than the pure self. Sat. Prana is no other than that Paradevata. If you take this, the separate self hopes to find peace in countless things of the world. That is Disham Patitva. And whether we get the position we wanted, we get the ice cream we wanted to eat, or we do not get. Finally, after some time, we are back to square one. That is ayatanam anyatra alabhva. Pranameva upashraya. So, in a manner of saying, all these are certain models. They are not to be given literal, they are not literally true. They are models, what we call adhyaropa, deliberate superimposition through which we are to arrive at the insight into the pure self. So, pranam eva uprashrayate. In a manner of saying, the jivatma arrives at deep sleep, is completely refreshed. It arrives in Sat, what was said earlier, Sata Sampanna. And the summary statement is Prana Bandhanam hi Somya Manaha. That is, Swarupa Bandhanam hi Somya Jivaha. You and I act as the Jiva, sometimes happy, sometimes sad, but our true happiness is when we surrender to our own true nature. How in Bhakti Marga it is said, you will find peace only when you do Sharanagati to God. In Jnana Marga, which is the more precise language, the way it is put is, when one understands one is the Sat Tattva, pure self, then all one's anxiety, wanting to get something, wanting to become something, wanting to go somewhere, etc., all of them lose their meaning. In this way, the two mantras give to us an extraordinary insight that I am the pure self and all else are appearances as though coming upon me and vanishing. In deep sleep, nothing of that sort comes upon me. In deep sleep, like always I am the pure self with no distractions at all, with no illusion, with no images, with no shadow play, doing some mischief over there. Thus, this is a lot of food for thought. Let me pause here. There is not anything significant or something very compelling quote from Shankara Bhashya this evening. So let's pause here. I welcome comments or questions. Om Namah Paramarashibhyaha. Namah Paramarashibhyaha.